listening to a Brawl Network production. This is a podcast for the best fans in the NFL.
Are you in the mafia?
Am I in the what?
It's time for a Bills Brawl podcast.
Second down and going, Kelly with the call. Touchdown!
Allen, deep shot, touchdown! On the line to Stephon Diggs.
And Sermon breaking tackles at the 22, inside the 10, touchdown Buffalo.
Let's talk some Buffalo Bills football. I'm Mike Lindsley, your host. This is the Bills Brawl, all a part of the Brawl Network. Get us on Twitter, at Bills Brawl, and of course, at Network Brawl as well. You can get me on Twitter, at Mike L. Sports. Well, the Buffalo Bills are active in the free agent market. Some fans, for one reason or another, I have no idea why, they're not happy with running it back with the same guys. They filled holes. They got the same players in the same system cheaper. They still had wiggle room to go out and sign Emmanuel Sanders, a wide receiver from New Orleans. You keep Darrell Williams, you keep Feliciano, and you keep Matt Milano, and you replace your punter. Obviously, Corey Bojorquez probably at this point is gone. Just a little too much money to pay a punter. They go out and get Haack from Miami, a guy who was really, really solid, not as good as Bojorquez last year, but pretty good. And more importantly, what I've been reading is he's a better holder for Tyler Bass as well. So that's a big deal. And everybody's coming back. I mean, there is something to consistency, to chemistry, to the locker room, to, all the words you hear, the cohesion. I mean, this team was so close with these players last year, and I know that the Chiefs are going to, they released a couple of tackles and replaced, them with Tooney right now. But I like this. I think Brandon Beane, I think this is exactly what you want if you're a Bills fan, man. Run it right back with the same guys. And let's talk more Buffalo Bills football right now with the terrific, longtime WGRZ Buffalo TV personality, sports insider in Western New York, covering the Bills, an Emmy Murrow winner, of course, as well. It's at Adam Benigni on Twitter. Adam, welcome aboard. Thank you, bud.
Pleasure to be here, Mike. Good talking to you.
The Bills, obviously, bringing back Darrell Williams and Feliciano and Milano, probably lower than what the market had them projected at. There's some fans out there in Bills Mafia who are upset because they want to make more of a big splash. I mean, to me, there's something to be said for consistency and continuity, right, and chemistry. Do you like it this way that Beane is bringing back and try to run this right back? That's what McDermott said he wanted to do too. Or would you rather have somewhere in the middle where there is a big splash and maybe you only bring back a couple of those guys?
I like the move to bring back their own. And what I like most about it is the fact that all three expressed they very much wanted to be back. I mean, to hear like a guy like Matt Milano plays the way he does, and like the first thing on the Zoom call is he says, I told my agent to get it done. I couldn't envision going anywhere else. And the reason I like that is because that has not existed in Buffalo for so long, right? Until McDermott got here and then being on the heels of McDermott's hire, and they changed the culture, this was not a destination for anybody. I mean, guys wanted to play out their contract and get the heck out of here. And so that's changed now. And that is one of the big hallmarks of a successful franchise. And we've seen it play out on the field. We've seen the culture. We've seen success lead to more success. Matt Milano, 12-1 with Matt Milano in the lineup, right, this year. And then obviously continuity on the offensive line. So important, as we've seen through the years. Yeah, they need to do more to get the running game in gear, and I understand that. But we've seen what big splashes in March lead to. A lot of times they don't win. Good for the Patriots for having the money to spend and going out and doing what they've done. But there are still major questions, obviously, at the quarterback position for them. And I'm not sure it necessarily translates. I think they'll be better. But do they win the division because of what they're done? No. I mean, there's no guarantee of success in terms of off-season splashes. So the Bills have a lot of the pieces in place. They need to add a couple here and there. If not this year, maybe next when the salary cap situation opens back up again and the Bills are going to have a lot of room. So, no, I very much like the fact they're able to bring back the top 3 free agents. And then, you cut a guy like Brown, release him for cap space, go out, get a 1-year deal with a guy like Emmanuel Sanders. So the moves that Beane makes continually seem to make sense to me. But the fact they're able to retain their top 3 free agents speaks volumes to me about how much the franchise has changed and evolved in a more favorable way.
When the Emmanuel Sanders thing came down, I was going there next, so I'm glad you brought that up, Adam. And here's a guy who was, a number 2 in New Orleans, behind Michael Thomas, catching balls from a Hall of Fame first ballot guy in Breeze, Hall of Fame head coach in Sean Payton, an offense that's just banana land, so good. Every year, year in, year out, the numbers they put up. So you put him in that Brian Daboll, Tricky Bill, kind of offense with maybe he's the new, quasi-gadget guy, plus he's a guy opposite Stephon Diggs. Now Gabe Davis has less pressure. I mean, this is a not only a really good player coming to the Bills, but we talk about it all the time in the NFL, right? System and fit. And to me, this is a good one on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I like John Brown as part of the offense, right? But I think maybe Sanders brings some additional dimension to it. So yeah, like I said, it makes sense. It's an added dimension. It's a guy, with the experience too. And not that Brown didn't have it, but I'm thinking about postseason situations. I'm thinking about how that offense, the Buffalo offense, cooled off in the playoffs a bit. Part of that, I think, is to be expected given the nature of those games and how they play out. But I am a little bit concerned that when it got to the postseason, it wasn't the high-flying, high-scoring attack that we've become accustomed to during their run during the regular season. So I think bringing in a guy like Sanders, a guy who's been there, done that, it brings that element to it as well. And you just said the key name, Gabe Davis, right? I mean, the progress he showed, the value they were able to get him at and draft him at, and what he was able to do this year, given a multifaceted nature of an offense and what adding a guy and bringing a guy like Sanders back into the mix does to replace a guy like Brown opens things up even more for a guy like Gabe Davis, who I think is going to be an impact player for years to come for this franchise. I really like what he brings to the table. So, I think Sanders adds a dimension, and he makes others around him better.
It appears as though Corey Bojorquez's time in Buffalo is up as the punter, and you've got obviously Andre Roberts now signing in Houston. I know that there are many more important positions than a couple of guys on special teams, but I tell you what, I really like these guys, Adam, and I know it was a little bit too much money for the Bills in terms of trying to put where their money is with the aforementioned names, but punter goes out there a couple times a game, okay, you can replace him, they did. Matt Haack comes in, the former Dolphin. Any concern deeper than what people might be thinking here, with the punter gone and the return guy gone? I mean, Andre Roberts, for as good as the offense was, he gave him short fields a few times too. So what about those two guys leaving Buffalo?
Well, I feel like Bojorquez, there's obviously an economic element to it, right, as you alluded to, in terms his status as an RFA and how that was going to play out. From what I understand about Haack, I mean, he has the Dolphins' all-time franchise net punting average, I think, at 39.9. So I think there's a lot to like about him. I think they'll feel more of it in terms of Roberts. I think that it was, a lot. We talked about this with Jay Skursky and Vic on Sports Talk Live the other night, on Monday night. It was a luxury to have him here, to really be as one-dimensional as he was and not have as much of a role as a receiver. But he's just so good. I mean, his all-pro status in years past, consecutive runs to the Pro Bowl, that sort of thing. What did he average? Close to 40 yards a kickoff, 30 yards a kickoff return or something. It was a big number.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah.
And his experience, His shorthandedness was the term that Skursky used that I happen to agree with. You're not just going to go out and replace him. And whether that's Isaiah McKenzie if he resigns or however they go about doing it, Andre Roberts is top shelf at his craft. And I do think in terms of the return game, they're going to feel that more. Punting, I can't necessarily speak to. I think Haack has a good track record. But in the return game, I think that's a significant loss. Can they overcome it? Can they deal with it? Obviously, I think so. Yeah, I think yes. And I think it was to be expected that he was probably going to make a move and go elsewhere. But I do think they're going to feel that in a meaningful way.
Adam Benigni with us here on the Bills Brawl. Mike Lindsley, your host, sports director, WGRZ Buffalo, the longtime Buffalo Bills insider, TV personality, at Adam Benigni on Twitter, a must follow. Last year when the Bills took off was when for you? When did you get the feeling that, man, this team's damn legit?
When did I get the feeling? Obviously, as they got through the tough losses to Tennessee and to Kansas City, I felt like the Seattle game, looking back on it, was when I realized that, to go out and hang 44 on them that day, or whatever it was, and come out and take command of that game and play as convincingly as they did that day, that was the one. We all saw them in the Tennessee and Kansas City losses, and the narrative became, okay, they're good, they're better, but can they compete and beat the elite teams in the National Football League? And the answer was no after those two losses. But then they were able to respond and really kind of find their groove. And it was the Seattle game that to me said, okay, there's a win, quality win over an elite opponent and an MVP candidate at the time in Russell Wilson. It checked all the boxes. So from that point on, it seemed to me like, okay, this is a team that has the capability to get into the playoffs and do some damage. And really that's how it played out up until the AFC Championship game, where we all know what happened there, and they were thoroughly outclassed by Kansas City. But a significant step forward, I think you'd agree, Mike, for this franchise and its trajectory under McDermott and Beane. Without
a doubt. NFL draft direction for you at 30, trade up, trade down, if you had to crystal ball it, would they even take a quick stab at a running back in that first spot with a Travis Etienne? I mean, Moss and Singletary, I think people are maybe giving up on a little bit here early. They need an edge rusher still as we record this. What's your feeling on the draft here, Adam?
I feel as if they have to do something significant to address the running game, right? I mean, I think that's the thing. If you're talking about hosting playoff games, with the weather being a factor, if you're talking about dealing with the Kansas City Chiefs in a ball control situation, I feel like they're going to – let's talk about the areas of needs, and Beane has done a good job of kind of whittling them down.
Yeah.
Running game, significant. Whether that means, running back, whether it means offensive line, despite the fact they still have things, they have continuity there with the free agent signings. They still need more bodies up front, I think. So you have to project long-term with a first-round pick, obviously. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them go there. Running back, I feel like that's high because I feel like you can get them quality players in other ways and lower in the draft. I feel like tight end is a big issue. And maybe Beane addresses that. I know they made an offer to Gronk, right? And they're expected to address. Maybe in free agency we see that happen. As we record this at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the signing period opening, today officially, but we have a sense of where they are and what they're doing through the tampering portion this week. I feel like tight end, and then obviously edge rusher. So in that slot, I hate to use a cliche, Mike, but I think you go within that spectrum of need. you probably got to go with best player available. And I hate to throw that at you because I don't like it when GMs say that to us because I feel like they're trying to let themselves off the hook sometimes. But I think there's merit to that mindset and that approach. And in particular, when you're in a situation like the Bills are, where you've got a lot of the pieces in place, it's something I think if you hit on that, the payoff is so great in terms of the compliment you can bring to your football team and the impact that player can make. But he's got a limited range of needs, and in that spot, I feel like he'll be able to address one of them.
Final thing, as we record this a few short hours ago, Ralph Krueger gone. I will ask one Sabres question. A lot of the Bills fans, obviously, listening to this are diehard Sabre fans as well, obviously. Krueger's gone. The season's been a disaster. I mean, can we define? I mean, is it rock bottom? Do we know what rock bottom is anymore with this franchise, Adam? I mean, what a disaster.
So they have defined it continuously over and over again. But they had to make this. It's a worst case scenario for this franchise to make this move. And doing the math, Don Granato, who's going to be the interim coach, and I believe he'll be just that, interim, with development coaches Matt Ellis and Dan Girardi are going to serve as his assistant coaches. But Granato will be the seventh coach to work under Terry and Kim Pegula in the 10 years they've owned the franchise. Coaches last year, less than a year and a half. Stop and think about that for a second. And when you churn coaches and general managers, I call it the quicksand effect. The more you struggle in quicksand, the further you sink. And the Sabres are probably the best example of that in professional sports, because that's exactly what's happened here. And so now, I like Kevin Adams. He's inexperienced, but I liked him as a player. I've covered him back in that conference final series with Buffalo when he was with Carolina, and they went on to win the Cup that year. I liked him as a guy that got more than the most out of his own talent, was a leader. I think he's a good hockey mind. I think he's inexperienced. So I appreciate his approach of saying he wants to take his time with this and get it right because they absolutely have to. I think it's important to look at the coaches they've had, and I'm specifically talking about recent hires. Dan Bilesma, more of an experienced kind of hard-nosed coach. Phil Housley was more of a hard-nosed coach. Jack Eichel and some of the other young talent in the organization didn't respond well to that. So what did Jason Botchell do, the former GM? He goes out and brings in kind of a softer, more philosophical guy in Ralph Krueger. And it worked initially, as coaching changes often do, but then it comes off of the rails. And this is a guy who had international experience, right? But international events are more compacted, right? They're the Olympics or the World Championships. They don't measure a coach's style over a sustained, long, full, or in this case, abbreviated NHL season, and the grind that comes with that, and the need to relate to players over a longer period of time and more of kind of a crucible. And I think it fell apart on those terms, the disconnect between what Krueger wanted to do in his style and what the players were able to execute on the ice. So they're in a fix. This is a really tough situation for them. And it hasn't worked with Jack. And as much as I hope, Kevin Adams today, Mike Harrington of the Buffalo News asked him about Eichel and the injury and his attitude about this whole thing. Adams says they hope to have him back, that he's in quarantine, about the injury part, but he wouldn't specifically answer kind of his interaction with Adams on the coaching issue yet. So I followed up as a last question and asked him specifically about it, and all he would say was the door is kind of open. So you get the sense that Jack's level of patience is running out here, that he hasn't at this point in his career been in the postseason, which is mind-boggling, but true. Does Jack Eichel want out? It's fair to ask that question. Should they trade Jack Eichel? It's fair to ask that one, too. And do you get what you can for him and ship him out west or something? For what they gave up and what they went through to get him with the tank and everything else, I can't even believe we're having this conversation.
It's amazing.
But that's the point things have devolved to right now. So it's absolutely critical that Adams makes the right hire in terms of the head coach. I'd love to see a president of hockey operations, something that Terry Pegula is, very much opposed to. Asked him repeatedly about it, and he doesn't want to get into it or whatever. I wonder who they can attract as a head coach even.
I know.
Who would want to come to Buffalo?
Right.
So, I mean, just think about the questions we raise and seem far from answers to at this point. And that's how sad a state of affairs it is in terms of the Buffalo Sabres with having to fire Ralph Krueger as head coach today.
Terrible. WGRZ Buffalo, Adam Benigni on Twitter, at Adam Benigni, WGRZ.com for more. Adam, thank you so much. I've always appreciated the conversations, throughout, and keep on keeping on your end, man. Continued success.
Pleasure being with you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
And it is worth noting, by the way, that with this Sabres clown parade that's going on, this is completely the opposite of what the Bills are right now, and they have the same owners. So as I've alluded to a bunch of different times, maybe it's just time the Pegulas take a step back and they're like, look, we care way more about the NFL collectively. I think Terry Pegula was after the Buffalo Sabres more. He's got that romance with the French Connection and all the rest. But the bottom line is that collectively, more effort, more this, more that, more understanding, more popular on the surface, even though in Buffalo you could argue it when the Sabres and Bills are both winning. I mean, Buffalo's an amazing hockey town. When the Sabres aren't in the playoffs, which they haven't been in forever, 10 years, they still rate unbelievably well in Buffalo. They're always in the top 3, top 5, top 7 for all the playoff series, top 10, always. So it's a fantastic hockey place, and I've been to playoff games. There are countless playoff games. It's spectacular. But here's the thing. The NFL and the Bills right now are so superior to the Sabres, and I'm a diehard Sabre fan. I'm a diehard NHL fan, but I know what the reality is, right? And so, maybe right now the Pegulas, you just simply look at it and go, look, time is it's up for us. We tried to do this. We came in. We bought Buffalo. We reinvented Buffalo. We restructured Buffalo. We revitalized the downtown. We did the whole One Buffalo thing. Great, and they did. And for as bad as the Sabres are, and for as bad as the Bills were in the beginning, and the mishaps and hiring Rex Ryan and all that sort of thing, I think the Pegulas have gone and they've learned as they've gone. The Bills are right now a major contender. The Sabres are a disaster. But on the whole, think about what could have happened. I mean, both of these teams could be gone right now. I mean, there were monster concerns for both of them at different points being gone, and they're both still in Buffalo. And for Buffalo sports fans, that's your lifeblood, man. I've heard from a lot of my friends in college, a lot of Buffalo sports fans in general, throughout the years, and they're like, look, if the Bills moved or the Sabres, I would move. I couldn't live here without my teams. That's a real thing. Buffalo, as passionate a sports town as anywhere. I just think maybe now the Pegulas have got to maybe sit back and go, look, it's hard to own 2 teams, right? Hard to own 2 teams. How many owners are out there owning 2 professional sports franchises and killing it? The list is short, and I can't even name one right now. Can't even name one. I mean, even the Washington situation for a while, okay, maybe there's one, but there aren't many. There are not many. This is the Bills Brawl. I'm Mike Lindsley. Thanks for listening. Of course, all a part of the Brawl Network. And get us on Twitter at Bills Brawl and at Network Brawl as well. Talk to you soon, Bills Mafia.